Welcome to Inside College Admission, conversations with admission leaders about matters affecting the college-going process. My name is Peter Van Buskirk, and I'm joined today by Jim Bach, Vice President and Dean of Admissions at Swarthmore College. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Peter.
Well, I'm glad to have you. I'm wondering, what's life like for you right now? I mean, it's April the 3rd. Normally, it's a celebratory time on college campuses. You've just admitted a class, and they want to see you. You want to see them, and then you've got probably thousands of juniors waiting to come to see your campus too. But are you doing things the way you usually do, or are things kind of quiet on your campus?
Things are very quiet on our campus. Unusual circumstances, of course. As we're speaking, I'm hearing my family in the background, so that's often unusual when I'm at work. So there's that. Fortunately, I'm only about 5 blocks from campus. The campus is just serene, beautiful, and to be honest, eerily empty. We miss the students, our colleagues, our staff and faculty. Zoom is the new way. We're being quite successful with our online and virtual academic programs and continue to meet virtually as a staff. We've instituted a social hour once a week just to connect virtually, but not talking about work. And that's been a way to connect. But every day brings new challenges, but also new opportunities. And so I think we're handling it well, given the challenges that we all face. And I just appreciate your viewers listening in, and I hope they're all safe and healthy during these challenging times.
Absolutely. But I'm wondering if maybe we could reflect just a little bit on what the last maybe 6 to 10 weeks have been like from where you sit. I mean, you've been working diligently with the applicant review process and probably getting into January, then to February, and word of the coronavirus is out there. It begins as a very regionalized thing on the globe, and then it's coming from China to Seattle to so on and so forth. What was the growing sense of anticipation from your staff and from you as this thing became more apparent for us?
Sure, and I think it was became real when it was on U.S. soil or U.S. territories, or New York became a potential epicenter.
Mm-hmm.
We were obviously abreast of it, aware, quite concerned for our friends and colleagues internationally as well as on the West Coast. But things started to move pretty quickly, and just the way our timeline fell, we released our decisions on March 19th. And so that was within days of essentially being told to shelter in place, employees on campus only. So we actually devised a social distancing letter stuffing campaign with about 4 people as opposed to 15 to 20, comprised of people from the advancement office and admissions, those who were close to campus. But this was really before people were really told to shelter in place in Delaware County. It was more just be safe and come in if you need to come in. And one of the essential functions was admitting a class. So fortunately, we had made it through committee. We had printed letters. I was signing them over a weekend, but that got delayed because I needed to retrieve my own daughter from her college to bring her home safely. So it just pushed everything back a couple days, but we did mail on time. Also with, technology, we're able to release decisions, and the snail mail or paper mail didn't get out on the same day, but I know other schools either got it out early, got it out a couple days late, but because of technology, I think most schools were able to release on time as we were. But there were challenges. Would we be able to get a mailing out? Would we be able to the class? As we went through committee, things didn't change that dramatically because a lot of decisions are made a week or two before decisions because financially needs the names to determine aid eligibility. And so there's a huge process in place to keep things moving. So it really didn't impact the decision making, but it was more the deliverables of the decisions, while at the same time planning for what things might look like on campus if we couldn't bring visitors to our campuses in April. And that became real, I would say, around March 15th. And so we originally had said we'll close through the 15th, and we had not canceled our programs, but very quickly, a few days after that, we realized we probably needed to be closed for a long time. We actually had to disinvite or uninvite 4,100 visitors, and I don't think folks realize how many people are actually coming through our campus in the spring. They see the big tours walking around campus, but a lot of families visit, and they just couldn't do that. So it was not only for our seniors who couldn't visit for our admitted student days, but also the sophomores and juniors and counselors who are starting the process now.
Wow. So you're kind of going through a withdrawal of sorts relative to the the outreach and sort of the engagement of the students and the parents as they come to campus. It's a high energy profession, and right now the energy isn't reciprocated.
So we had, just as an example, we had a great idea to send swag. So a lot of schools are sending, you can't come to us, so we'll send you a T-shirt or something like that. So of course, in the quote early days, which again is less than early days was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. But we asked
It's a long month of March.
It's a long month, right? We asked students for their shirt size, right? And we'll send you something if possible. Well, of course, the shirts were printed, but they're in quarantine. They're in boxes and the factory's closed. So, can we send them anything? And one of the pieces of advice is don't ask for shirt size, but if you can send any swag. So colleges are trying to reach out and meet students where they are. But it is hard to get mail out. So post offices are still open, but we're working remotely because health and safety comes first, obviously for our students on campus, and then to make sure they're all set in place, but then for the workers too, and making sure that the essential employees and students who remain on campus are safe and well.
Absolutely. I'm curious, and this is a little off topic with regard to college admission, but I suspect your faculty spent their spring break in a much different manner than they anticipated.
Yeah, we had a spring break, and faculty decided to extend spring break for a week to allow them to essentially do a crash course in virtual learning. So the goal was to reduce people on campus during the break, but then we made the decision we're going to extend break, and then and I think it was going to start instruction on April 6th, but that became pretty clear pretty quickly that people were not going to be welcome back on April 6th. So we spent the second week of spring break making sure students could get where they could go, and those who couldn't leave could shelter in place and continue their academics here. And the faculty spent that week prepping for Zoom virtual instruction and how the rest of the semester might look, whether there would be pass-fail grades, things of that nature. So there, a lot of things still in flux, some decisions made, a lot of decisions yet to be made for the remainder of the year. But then it also became clear that we needed to cancel, unfortunately, graduation, alumni weekend, and we are going to be closed through May 31 as of now. And it was first Philadelphia, then it was Delaware County, and about 26 counties. I believe it's statewide now. So we were just following state guidelines and national guidelines on campus, and again, trying to protect who we had here. And so this changes every day. And I think we just need to be nimble and flexible and meet families where they are as best we can.
I think your word choice is great, nimble and flexible. And, as I've talked with folks through this series, I've just been impressed, and I don't know why I should feel that way, but really impressed by the way campuses are rallying around this situation and making education possible for the students who are already on campus, sort of recreating themselves in terms of outreach for the students who've been admitted, et cetera. So it sounds like you're really on the mark with that as well. I'm kind of curious with regard to the calendar going forward here now. What accommodations, if any, have you been making with regard to enrollment deadlines, enrollment deposits, that sort of a thing?
Right. So one thing we did, and you had asked this earlier, so it's going to finish answering the last question and rolling into this one. We didn't change admissions too much because we were right on the timeline, and this was evolving again daily, hourly, by the minute, if you will. So there were a lot of changes to the admitted class because it was essentially out the door. But I did increase the wait list. That was a way to say, hey, if people can't get here, if they can enroll, we don't know what if, and we don't waitlist people just to waitlist people, but we do waitlist folks who are more than qualified, who we simply don't have room for. And so that was a strategy, if you will, to understand we need to get a class in whatever shape or form that might come. So that the first strategy was let's increase waitlist offers a little bit and see what happens. That rolls into your question of, well, what about May 1? What about deadlines? How are we accommodating families? I think the advice from NACAC, our National Association for College Admissions Counselors, was, hey, work with families, which of course we're all doing, but also allow them a chance to visit campus. Well, then that also became pretty clear. Well, if you extend it, they may not be here in June either, or May, right? Or not April, not May, possibly not June. I think Virginia has now extended their shelter in place through June 10th. And so again, we wanted to be fair to all. And once the college made the decision that we would end May 31st, we decided to hold to May 1, not because we don't want to be supportive of families, but we do think some will be able to make decisions 4 weeks from now. We don't know what's going to change. Obviously, we'll work with individuals. Everything's subject to change. We will be public about that. But there needs to be at least, we believe, one group of schools that may hold to May 1. And then as we push back, because if we push back to June 1, or a lot of us do, then other schools will push back to July to August. And then when does this ever end? And do we ever get a class? So we're actually doing it with students in mind, that the reality is they're going to have to make a decision without setting foot on a campus, most likely, and will need to explore their options virtually. And so whether they do that on May 1, May 10th, May 15th, we just think, given where we are right now, we're holding to May 1, but again, subject to change when, this goes out there, or someone sees it tomorrow and someone sees it in 3 weeks. Everything I said today may be moot. So stay tuned.
Right. The daily news feed will determine perhaps what the schedule looks like. There points in conversation where I feel like we might be looking at sort of a rolling enrollment process through the whole summer, which would be probably more profound at some places than others. But
Right.
It's I don't envy you having to manage all of that.
Right. No, and I realize there are schools too who are still extending deadlines, right? Too. So there's different types of schools, different state institutions, and a lot of challenges family face. So again, I'm speaking both from a Swarthmore perspective, but also a national one, and try to balance both the needs of our institution, the needs of our current students, or those who are having difficult decisions. And again, we'll work with each individual. Right now, publicly, we're May 1, but we will look at that.
I would imagine that one of the factors that's hard to measure for you right now is the whole stay close to home factor. And you may have seen this after 9/11 as well, when there's uncertainty about the world around you as a family, and well, let's just keep the kids closer to home. I mean, Swarthmore is a school that draws internationally, and certainly well across the continent too. Do you worry at all that you're going to find that some families just say to their kids, that was really great you got in, but let's maybe stay closer to home?
Yes, I worry about it all, and to be honest. And however, my hope and our counsel would be, do what's best for you and your family. I mean, I've actually had several of those conversations. We are open to a possible gap year or taking time. I mean, I've been just heartened by the conversations I've had with a handful of students who are like, I knew my family was important, but now I realize how important they are. I don't want to go that far away. I might. We're hoping that an election will continue, and maybe this is my opportunity to vote for the first time, or make a difference, or find a way to impact the turnaround whenever we get through this, and we will get through this at some level. And I really respect those thoughtful conversations. So they're not all about money. A lot of times it's about family, it's about geography, and obviously it's about affordability, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. But I just appreciate the thoughtful conversations, and we're like, we will support whatever decision you make. Though we are a national and international school, one of the concerns I do have are international students, and it's about 10 to 12% of our population. At some schools it's lower, some schools it's 20, 30, 40%. And as we know, or your viewers may or may not know, the embassies are closed and not accepting visa appointments. So even if a student or a family says, yes, I want to come, and they submit the deposit, that doesn't mean they're going to show up in August. So if 30 students say yes, but then the visas offices do not open in May or June, or they're not allowing, Zoom appointments, which right now they're not, and that's fine. Again, I think they're keeping an eye on things as well in terms of safety and security. We want to be conscientious of that. You could have 30 students who say they're coming, but that don't make it. The other concern is study abroad programs. As we look forward, will study abroad exist in its current form? It may or may not, depending upon the country, on the location. Do they start on time? Are they delayed? But let's say it may be, work out perfectly where you have 30 international students who can't get here, but you've got 30 students who are planning to go abroad who now need the dorms on campus.
Exactly.
What is our target? That is a real challenge for the college. So what is the number? And we have a target in place, as all colleges do, but that will shift too based on affordability in terms of what schools can afford in terms of financial aid budget. How can they house students? A lot of schools don't house juniors and seniors, so there's less concern there. If students can get off-campus housing because they're not guaranteed on-campus housing, that may impact smaller schools more that are residential, where we require all first years to live on campus. And so just some real challenges. And I think families want answers. We're trying to provide them as quickly as possible, but we're also cognizant of dealing with the current students, helping the seniors, but then also looking forward to the sophomores and juniors who are just starting the process. So juggling a lot. I would say it went from 90, 95, 100% to let's at least admit the class, and then 80%, okay, yield the class and look forward. And now it's shifting a little bit. Let's keep moving on supporting our admitted class, but looking forward to the future and scenario planning, and just what are the best laid plans that we can or yes, I'll re-say that. What does the future hold? We don't really know, and so we're sort of scenario planning for several different outcomes.
Sure, sure. Now, you did mention and promise that we talk about the money part of it. The coronavirus is an absolute and unprecedented health crisis on globally. What perhaps has hit just as hard is the economic crisis. There are a lot of folks, I'm sure, in your admitted student group whose parents were feeling pretty comfortable. At least they thought they could figure out how to pay for college 6 weeks ago. And looking a lot different right now. How do you folks anticipate, what sort of response do you anticipate from your admitted student group? And can you print money? How are you going to help them?
Right. Well, we're fortunate in that we have a strong endowment that supports a significant part of our financial aid. And to your point, it's not just the admitted students who are weighing offers, it's the early decision candidates that we have who've already committed. But you know what? Things looked a lot different in November, December, January than they do in March, April, and May. So we are open for reconsideration. Any family at any time can request a reconsideration. As you know, for early candidates, early action, early decision, when they're admitted in the fall, it's based on, income tax information from 2 years ago or prior, but also it's based on the previous year's tuition. Tuitions are not set until the spring, so aid changes as tuition shifts. But again, chances are tuition is probably going to go up. At what rate, we don't know. Will it stay flat? We don't know. But we also know that families' questions of affordability are real and are changing. So I would encourage families to ask, if it is a challenge, to ask for reconsideration. What are my work opportunities look like on campus? I'm not suggesting loans, but loans are a way to pay. The question is, I feel, what is too much? Loans aren't inherently bad, but too many loans are not a good idea. And right now that's really tough if you can't guarantee future income, either for the family or for the students. So I think it's a difficult position, particularly for the seniors, because they, in a sense, can't reapply. My hope is that they apply to a wide variety of schools, not 30, but let's say, 10 or 12. Let's say they got into 6 or 7. Hopefully some of those are, potentially highly selective schools with strong endowments, others that are state options, some that are offering merit aid. And so now the choice is, hey, we got into 5 or 6 great schools. What might be our best financial option? It might not have been my first choice school, but it's the most affordable school that will suit me well moving forward. If that didn't happen and they only have, quote, high price institutions or just state schools, but, again, we hope that in April they do actually have choice. We hope that they got into several schools and can weigh those offers. And my sense is that schools will continue to leverage merit aid a little bit in terms of helping those families who have the merit dollars, but not everyone has the ability to meet need, though need is changing daily. Mm-hmm. So you're open to those reconsiderations. And I think many schools just need to be, though I know there will be some schools and universities that just won't have the budget. And then the question is, it's not just for 1 year, it's for 4. And that's the other advice I would give the families. I always say, don't look 1 year ahead, look 4 years ahead. Mm-hmm. So when you receive our need-based aid decision, it may be close, it may be not, you might like it, you might not like it, but you apply for admission once, you apply for need-based aid every year. So your situation may change, tuition will change. It really is a 4-year outlook. So we totally understand if people need to make different plans this year, but they should definitely ask. And in terms of what those options are, they need to ask first the schools that they've been admitted to, and then there may be some resources for outside scholarships, but a lot of people are looking for those now.
Yeah. Did you think that the Department of Justice action this last fall will have any impact, maybe not on Swarthmore? I mean, you have a nice position in the market right now, but schools that may not be quite as selective, maybe facing different kind of pressures to get a class, will perhaps foster a bit of a bidding war for kids that might bubble up and affect you guys. Do you think that's
Yeah, I think it just exacerbates what we thought might be coming, right? So we can't talk and collude, if you will, in terms of what each school is doing. So we're learning and hearing about things live, right? Just as it happens. So we heard early on about some schools that offered early incentives. If you apply early, you get a parking permit and preferred housing, or your advisor or whatever. So that's fine. We recognize people need to do, or schools need to do what they need to do. I just think that's going to be ramped up a little bit. What that looks like, I don't know. What I imagine is it does mean extended deadlines. I know NACAC puts out the survey for schools that still have space and or aid. I would encourage families to look at that list. My guess is that's going to be a little bit longer list of schools that might need, that might have space to fill. My concern is, do they have $8 to match? And I think that's anyone's guess at this point, if schools will be able to offer that.
well, and to your point, do they have $8 for 4 years?
Right.
Again, they can bulk up and with a very generous financial aid award for year one, but when you need to get some sort of understanding of what the renewal prospects are like for that aid, assuming that need persists. So
Right.
let's take a look back at again the students who were just admitted. They're pretty excited because I got into Swarthmore. I need to go back and kick the tires, talk to people, meet professors, ask all the important questions that I have. But now those doors are closed to them. What kinds of things have you and your staff been working on to accommodate the kids and the parents that want to have that one last walk around campus that would give them the absolute comfort that this is where I want to be?
Right. It is ongoing and it's changing. So as I mentioned, we said, hey, we'll send them a care package, but
Right.
now that may not happen. What I will say on that is that we did have an abundance of Mott socks. Lucretia Mott is a suffragist and a graduate of Swarthmore College.
Mhm.
And so our advancement office has those. So if anyone's listening who's been admitted to Swarthmore, you may be getting a pair of Mott socks versus the t-shirt. So you get creative, right? And
All
it was
right.
a small cohort who came in to check the mail, and we're stuffing small packets. So again, these aren't thousands because we're a small school and admit a certain number, but anyone who requested that hopefully will get that. So again, that's an example of shifting and how you do that. We always have a Facebook page, so students can join the admitted student Facebook group. We have taken tours and turned them into virtual hangouts. So what I will offer is not anything necessarily unique to us. A lot of schools are doing this, but the virtual hangouts, in fact, being here in South Eastern Pennsylvania during the summer, we have afternoon storms, some lightning storms. So every guide is trained to, actually, it's part of our tour guide training, to shelter in place during inclement weather or a snowstorm. And so we said, you know what, virtual hangouts are going to be like that. You're going to be all together in a small group, answering questions and having that tour, but they'll be on Zoom. We're capping them to 10 because we want to keep them small, but we're offering over 100 between now and May 1st. So rather than invite 60 to 100 people to a giant tour, they can sign up. So they can sign up for multiple tours. They can look at the profile of the students. They can pick the engineer who's giving a tour, or the English major, or the theater person. And so students have our tour guides have signed on to do that. And we're doing them in pairs, just because, again, they're at home, that we don't, they're all over the country and the world. And so they're sheltering in place safely where they are. But we thought it would be nice to have two tour guides sort of co-tag a tour. So we're calling them virtual hangouts, but really it's an online tour. And it's a conversation, just much like we would be if it's raining outside or thunder and lightning. Hey, come into this classroom, let's sit and talk to one another. So those are 45 minutes to an hour long, and we're offering those. We will be offering virtual panels. We just posted today. They'll come later in April. So these will replace sort of our traditional admitted student on-campus programmings. So we'll have one on current student voices, one for FLY, first generation low-income students at SWAT, Life Beyond Swarthmore, an alumni panel, student support, a conversation with the dean staff that may be repeated. And I'm currently working on a faculty panel that will happen. We just haven't set it up yet because, again, our focus was, let's allow the faculty to get settled and get the virtual learning up and running. And then we'll let them know, hey, can you help us with the class? We have a few other things, YouTube channel, connect with your regional dean. We think it's really important, particularly at a small college, to have those one-on-one conversations. So we wrote letters to all admitted students with our personal contact information saying, please contact us if there's anyone we connect you with. We're happy to do that. We have Ask a Swati. So if you don't want to take a tour or join a group, you can just go to the Ask a Swati page and you can see the profiles and click on our profile and speak directly to those students. And one other thing that might be unique, we actually offered students to request a USB drive. So if they don't have access to virtual opportunities, our director collected a bunch of USB drives before we were remote, and we're putting the content on the USB drive, and those can be sent out individually and mailed, put in the mail safely without a lot of effort. So it's a little effort to get the content on the USB drive, but we want to be cognizant of people who may not have strong access, where they could view it on their computer, but they don't have strong internet connection.
Sure.
And so that's sort of I think, a unique feature we've tried to unveil.
But it seems like you've been pretty effective at creating a lot of high value touches, if you will, for the prospective student, but at a safe distance.
That's the hope.
That's the hope. Now, you never rest, because you want to get this class put to bed, if you will, and then you have the next one. And I don't know what the normal planning process would be for, the second half of the year, but typically the admission staffs are out visiting high schools in the late spring and in the fall, certainly college nights, college fairs, open house programs, mock candidate review kind of things. All of that's got to be up in the air right now. Are you beginning to talk about how your team will approach the recruitment process of the next class?
Yeah, so 2 weeks. So we now meet. We usually have a staff meeting, an hour a week, every Tuesday type of thing. And so we've continued that virtually and kept the same time, and that's worked really well. And I would say the last 2 meetings is when we started to shift the conversation, as I mentioned, to looking ahead. And even before that, basically it was just make sure everything's canceled, right? It wasn't even what are we going to do? It's just make sure, either your hotel's canceled. And before we even had a chance to do that, most high schools were reaching out to us, the DC independents, the New York schools, the California schools. So there are a lot of case studies programs. There are a lot of public independent college fairs in April and May for juniors. So as those started shutting down, that let us breathe a little bit to focus on the accepted students. But these last 2 weeks, we have been focusing on the future. And so we have already accepted virtual invitations for virtual college fairs. So that is what we will join. We will be working to have virtual group information sessions a la the tours. But again, our focus right now is on the admitted students, and then we'll shift to the perspectives. But that may be up and running in, say, May or June if we don't open. We hope to hopefully open in June, maybe July again. That's always a moving target, but we're expecting not to be on campus through May. So we're going to offer remote group sessions and attend remote college fairs and maybe panels. So something like this, but sponsored by a high school, public or private, where 3 or 4 admissions deans can talk about a university of liberal arts, how they're dealing with the situation, but still share important information about what the future looks like for those who are just starting the process.
Continue to innovate. Very good. One of the things that I've heard from concerns I've heard from high school juniors right now has to do with testing, and they feel dislocated from process in general, but they took maybe a PSAT in the fall, maybe an SAT in January, wanted to do something to bump up the math score a little bit, but now all of a sudden their options are diminishing, and there's increased worry about, is there going to be another opportunity to take the test? What if I have to apply with what I have? Are you giving any thought to how you might accommodate the students who are presenting test profiles that may not quite match up with what they would normally have or would hope to have?
Yes, constantly. Again, so it's that mental juggling of the current students, the prospective students, the future students. But no, we do give that great thought, and we're thinking of it constantly and keeping an eye on things. So right now, again, as it stands this minute, whatever today is, there are scheduled to be June and July tests, but again, that could change. So we do think there are still summer options and fall options. A lot of students take it for the first time senior year. So again, I think it's different for, quote, the highly selective schools versus the less selective schools. Many are considering going test optional, so not getting rid of the tests, but maybe testing for a year. Will be optional for a year to get through this crisis. We might be optional for 3 years. We've done the study. We were going to come out, but you know what? We're just going to, get rid of standardized testing as admissions criteria. Right now, we've not made that move, but we are looking at it. My sense is that, yes, the April, May testing dates are no longer with us. June and July may soon follow. So if that happens, you'll probably hear something. But again, it's still a little bit too early at this point. And I would also say it's an opportunity to focus on your work, as difficult as that is. And what I mean by that is sadly, and unfortunately, we understand they are not competing in sports. They are not running the traditional club meetings, and maybe they are finding ways to create those clubs virtually, which is awesome. It is hard to get motivated in your bedroom for your schoolwork, right? Particularly as a college or a high school student. And so we recognize that. But there is also technically more free time, maybe not, in terms of all the activities or some that they do. And unfortunately, many of them are not working who have part-time jobs. So I would say focus on those grades because the grades are going to matter. Having said that, I would also offer a lot of high schools haven't decided how they're going to deliver the instruction and what a transcript may look like. And what I can promise them, or at least from Swarthmore, and I hope for my colleagues, is that we recognize that. We will be nimble and flexible. As I look forward, I keep thinking, there's just going to be this giant asterisk on spring 2020, whether you're a junior or a sophomore or a first year. And we just get it. We always say, what are your most important grades junior year until you get to senior year, right? So we may not have junior grades or test scores. So that is, again, going to create more innovation, more creativity among admission staffs, counselors. So we will respect high school decisions, and then we'll reserve the right to interpret what they give us, but we will continue to treat everyone as fairly as we can in the context with which we understand they have been graded, whether that's pass-fail, a graded system, a universal pass, whatever that form that might take. The challenge we're seeing, and I think this will vary by school as it should, and is really a faculty decision. I understand now, and this goes back to the seniors, Peter, about students who might have 45-minute APs versus 3-hour tests, and that the IB has canceled all exams. And so they're going to grade on the same scale, but that doesn't mean the same content has been mastered. And so will colleges offer the same credit? That I can't answer for you. I can tell you AP exams and IB scores are not required for admission. We look for the rigorous curriculum, but what you score does matter, but it technically doesn't impact your admission decision. If you graduate successfully, your decision is not in jeopardy. What I can't tell you right now is if you get 3, 4s, or 5s, are you going to get that credit? Well, you might get partial credit. Again, I haven't seen the test. Yeah. So I think there is a question for faculties at colleges, universities. Are they just going to accept that? Because, particularly in the sciences, it's linear. And so if you only learned half of calc, but you got a 4 or a 5, do you enter that next level? Or again, these are questions that we don't have answers to yet, but that's part of the thinking about moving forward. I think admissions offices will work with schools to grant credit and support admissions, but how that translates to college credit, I think, is still an unknown question.
So stay tuned on that matter. One other thing I'd like to touch base with you on here as we kind of get to the end of our time. In a holistic review process, as you use, you're looking at all kinds of factors beyond the academic. And one of them is going to be a student essay. Do you think you're going to get many coronavirus essays this year?
We do. And it's too soon to talk much about that. But I think someone, again, I don't think it was admissions or something. It's like, oh, well, admit the students who don't write about the coronavirus, right? So again, and it's, I don't want to belittle it. This is a real thing that everyone is living and experiencing, and tragic in many ways for many families. And so it's not that they shouldn't write about it, but it is going to be a defining moment. And so, and how it impacted them, how they change. I often stress it's not the what, but the why and the how. Exactly. Who were you? How did this impact you? Who were you before? Who did you become? So the topic is less important than the content of the essay which they're sharing. Okay. And so there are going to be those essays, and that's absolutely fine. So we're not going to say, do write about it, don't write about it. We're going to say, write about something meaningful. We get it. This is a critically meaningful and poignant moment for every family, regardless of how it's touched you personally. But I think sadly, we're all going to know someone directly impacted by it if we don't already. And so we recognize that, and we have a lot of empathy and sympathy for these students. And we, in a holistic review, do look at the essays. We look at the recommendations. I know teachers are going to write amazing letters for how students, carried through this very difficult time in their lives. And I appreciate that we take the time to read the recommendations, the essays, look at the transcript, look at the rigor, look at upward versus downward trends. And you know what? I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, I bet there are going to be a lot of downward trend grades in the junior year. And that, we're not going to hold that against someone. Some will have more advantage if they have access to networks. Some may be living in an apartment with 8 people and have no privacy. And how do they get the homework done? And they've lost their job, which was providing income for the family. So we recognize that. And I think we need to do a better job of meeting students where they are and helping them understand we recognize that these are real challenges that they're facing. I do think it leads to potential innovation for admissions moving forward as we look to the future. I don't think it will return to business as usual, though I do think in times of great crisis and major disruption that it's a time for innovation and creativity. It may impact climate change in a positive way. Maybe we won't be traveling as much and going to those college fairs. Maybe we'll limit our visits to a more local outreach, virtual, international, and far west. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I just think it begs a lot of other questions, just about how we communicate with each other, how we communicate. This generation is very savvy with technology, so maybe this is a new wave of technology on how we do this, which is not a bad thing necessarily.
Well, I just recall from my days in admission that it was awfully hard to subtract things from our repertoire because we always did it that way. But so as innovations came along, we added on, and it just became this behemoth of an operation. But I suspect now you and your colleagues and counterparts at other schools are being forced to make some difficult decisions about what you keep and what you don't keep. And
Right.
now, if you're able to test some ideas with regard to the virtual presentation, et cetera, and they're successful, well, it might be easy to subtract now. So one other question for you, Jim. Let's suppose in the coming days, you happen upon a 17-year-old rising high school senior who is just bewildered and confused about what's going on in the world around her, and also as much concerned about the college admission process because she just feels disconnected from it all right now. How would you advise that student or any other student like that who's just trying to find some direction?
Sure. I would say, just honestly and sincerely take a deep breath and say, not that this too shall pass, but that focus on family, focus on your academics, focus on your study. Do use the internet, but don't spend 8 hours at the computer because we know you have to do that with your studies and other outreach. But look at schools virtually. Reach out to friends who have gone on to college and ask them about their experiences. So it's not the same as an in-person visit, but I will say, and what I will tell the 17-year-old is in my social distancing, but when I have walked around my community, many of my neighbors know what I do. And many of them said, wow, it must be challenging. And I said, we're doing fine. But what they have all said is, I didn't visit the college I attended. And so I think it's more recent that we have this idea that everyone visits every college that they're applying to or that they get into. I often counsel families, we realize it's expensive. You can't visit all places. That's a privilege to go visit these campuses. Often you need to submit some applications, get admitted, see what you can afford, and then visit the 2 or 3 that you can afford. It's a less expensive way to do it. It's not ideal, but again, it's a different system or a different process for every individual. And I would say, business as usual is no longer where we are, but use those virtual opportunities to visit campuses. The drone the drone footage of campuses are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
They don't replace the on-campus experience, but you can get a sense of location, size of campus, those one-on-one conversations with current students. So look to those ahead of you, probably not the seniors right now, but those 2 or 3 years ahead of you that you admired who went on to college because they did have their first or second years in college. Some of them are finished, or all of them now are finishing those years at home. But there are people to talk to, counselors, and just to get a sense of, tell me what college is like for you. How did you transition from our public high school or this private high school to the college where you are now? So I still think there are questions they can ask. And what's most important to me as they head into senior year, those who are juniors, sophomores, I think have a little bit more time. We will also, give them a break for those activities or those commitments because, again, they're just not as possible in the same way right now. But it might be a way to think about, how can I give back to my own family, whether that's sheltering in place or helping the community once things turn around. And again, they don't need to stress about that so much other than focus on the work, focus on family, focus on their health, and then we'll be there for them with questions when they come to us.
Great advice. Great advice. Thank you very much. Uh, where would you like students and parents to go to get more information about Swarthmore? Do you want to do a shout out for your website or a webpage on your site?
Sure. I would say swarthmore.edu or admissions at swarthmore.edu. They can find more about the college, our academic program. There's a select admitted students page that we share that link just with accepted students, but essentially virtually everything else is open to all families who want to take a look, but admissions at swarthmore.edu.
And I have to go off script with one observation and question. How does your undefeated basketball team reconcile the end of the season?
Wow. Wow. You just gave me chills there. Wow. You got me on that one. They reconcile it because they had a lot of fun while they were doing it. I think their success was due in large part, not just to the leadership of the team, the coach, the phenomenal community that surrounded them, but they just took each game day by day. They decided not to look at the initial ranking. Of course, they had a breakout year last year and have increased and improved every year. But they said, we've been there. We know what it takes to get back, but we've got a new team of guys. Let's just take each day by day. And they learned from one another. They appreciated one another. That's a hard thing to do. It didn't end the way we expected, but I think they're the first Centennial and maybe the first, I don't know if a Division III team that's gone ranked number one end to end. And again, it didn't end with a win or a loss and not how we wanted to end, but it's really special and an amazing group of guys. I will say I was out and no one was out. I was just walking around and I saw someone shooting hoops, again, only one on the court, and it was the Rookie of the Year, National Rookie of the Year, Vinny D'Angelo from Aston, who just needed to get out and shoot some hoops. That now has been closed, so he won't be out. But it was just pretty cool seeing him still, taking shots, even though, and had they kept winning, it was a day he probably would have been playing in a game. So it was sort of a bittersweet moment to see him, and I didn't go bother him, but just admired him from a distance. But they're a great group of young men and a phenomenal team, and the college really rallied around them, and we're just really proud of them.
Absolutely. Well, go Garnet. And
Thank you
for giving up some time out of your day. I know it's incredibly busy right now. Your thoughts and insights are going to be very helpful to many young people and their parents as they engage in this process. So thank you again. And for those who are watching this particular interview, there are others to check out on the Scoir website. We hope that you'll take a look, but in the meantime, have a great weekend, be safe, and we'll look forward to the next opportunity to chat. Thanks again, Jim.
Thank you, Peter, and best to everyone out there.